right, welcome everybody to our Lighting the Way Lessons Learned 2.0 webinar with the Lighting Advocacy Letter Group. I am Laurel Christensen. I'm Director of Outreach and Engagement with Mindful Materials. I'm also an architect and sustainable design leader at Dyer Brown in Boston, who is a proud signatory to the Lighting Advocacy Letter. And we are super excited about all the work that this group has done to raise awareness, get the word out, and get some huge alignment in the industry around a call for materials transparency when it comes to lighting specifically. And they've done an amazing job putting together an awesome toolkit to help you get started if you and your firms are new to this. So I will pass it over to Sarah, who's going to be the host and driving the presentation today. And feel free to put questions in the chat. I think Sarah's going to add some more kind of housekeeping items. Please, everybody, you're welcome to be on camera if you'd like, if you're okay being recorded. But please, everyone, keep your microphones muted just so we don't get feedback. And with that, I will pass it over to Sarah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laurel. And thanks everybody for showing up for our second roundtable discussion, which is actually our third overall session. But don't worry, if it's the first time that you've been here, we're all learning together. You're not behind. It's definitely an evolving process. So today, here's our agenda of what we're going to attempt to cover. We'll talk a little bit about who's in the room through a poll in just a minute and some of our where are we at questions. Mel's going to give us a quick recap of the first two sessions, and she'll mention, I think, multiple times that they're online. If you want to go check them out, they're on the Mindful Materials site. We've got some great updates to the toolkit that Laurel mentioned, and then we have some exciting outside case study perspectives. If you were a part of our last session, we shared some lessons learned from our group. And now we've got some other people. So we've got Adam Kibbe from Collaborative Lighting on the line, and we've got Sean Wynn from Reflex Lighting on the line. Adam is a designer specifier. Sean is an agency rep. So they're going to give us some of their perspectives. We're going to show you some of our new tools and ask another couple questions, and then we'll wrap up. And as Laurel said, please feel free to be as engaged as you want visually, but we are recording. Please be quiet with the mute button unless you're actually saying something, and definitely be active in the chat because we are looking for people to engage as much as possible. So I'm going to attempt my first Zoom poll, so bear with me as I do this, but we're going to try to get some information from the audience that we can start to build on in these sessions and keep some data. So the first thing I'm going to show, hold on. The first thing I'm going to do is relaunch this poll for first one and ask people what their roles are. So if you could quickly pick whatever looks closest to you, and if it's other, I apologize. And you could drop in the chat what you are if it doesn't fit here. So we've got a group of almost 30, and looks like we're some lighting designers and architects, a few interior people, and we've got some reps manufacturers and that other category too. So a couple more, I'll give it just another second or two because we've got 24 of 27, but that looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to go end that one, and hopefully you guys can see the results here. Right. Now I'm going to go to our next question, which is, where are you on your sustainable design journey? And try to pick the thing that makes the most sense to you. If 1 is beginning and 5 is leading. Awesome. Lots of people in the middle. That's pretty typical. And we've got a couple people just starting, so welcome. And thank you for joining us. Awesome. So I think we've got that 24 number again. So I'll give it 25. We got 1 or 2 more. Let's see. I'll give it a second. All right, cool. So great. Exactly where we want to be in terms of what we're presenting today. So that's great. Third question. Now this is, if you are a rep, maybe you've asked other reps, but have you asked reps if you're a specifier about label types availability? You can use label broadly. Awesome. So we've got lots of people asking the questions. Not yet. That's great. If you don't know what questions to ask, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. The toolkit's chock full of ideas. And I can share the results there. And then I think we've got just a couple more here. Have you discussed with manufacturers concepts? It's probably missing a word, concepts about transparency. Awesome. And those of you at Education, it was definitely a buzzing topic there. I'm sure it will be at Light Fair and at Enlighten and other places as well. ArcLight coming up. I think one of the things we're definitely hearing is when people ask about it, people don't think it's just a regional thing or things like that. Okay, so we've got that. Lots of yeses. That's amazing. And then here's a big one. Have you specified anything yet? Oh, I love seeing that yes bar just jump right up. That's awesome. Very cool. Putting things into action. Okay, and we're almost at 100% participation there. So keep this moving along. That's amazing. Hopefully next time we'll see those graphs change a little bit in the positive direction. And the last question for this part of the poll, hold on a second. I'm still sharing something else. All right, here we go. Have you set project goals related to material health and transparency? Awesome. Seeing those yeses pour in. We don't always hit every goal, but just having one's a great start. So this is fantastic. Sweet. Okay. I'm not seeing any other numbers coming in. So there's our last one as well. For those of you also interested in the data, and I think we're going to try to do a little bit more of this because it's always interesting to, measure and mark. So, all right, I think, am I still sharing any polls? Hopefully they're gone now. Okay, cool. Right on. So let's move right along here. As we've said, this is a journey and we've already taken a few steps. You may not have been with us as they happen, but this is the third session that we've had of these. The first two are online and the fourth is going to be coming up on October 11th. That's already set. The topic is going to be kind of a combo. We're going to have some perspectives of lighting manufacturers who have kind of walked the walk and talked the talk and giving us their perspectives on how it's done. And we're also going to hear from the museum group that is also into this, just like lighting and architecture and interiors, these other segments. Museum design has also started on their journey. They're kind of modeling off of what we've done, and we've modeled off of what the architecture group has done. So it's exciting to see their evolution, and they're going to give us some of their bright spots and their wins as well. So definitely mark your calendars for October 11th. And then you can kind of expect them to happen on a cadence of about every 6 months. So about twice a year, we're trying to get people together to talk about the topic. And if you're someone that has a segment of this conversation that you think we should drill into more, or you'd love to share something you've learned, or have just something that we should be focusing on more, please let us know, because we're always looking for the right content for these conversations as we're all learning together. So I'm going to hand it over to Mel to talk quickly about what our last two sessions were about for those of you who haven't been here. And right before she joins, I'm going to ask one more thing. Can you hop in the chat? And if you've been at the first and the second and the third, put 1, 2, and 3. If this is your first time, put that. But I'd love to know how many people have actually been, just so we know here with us now, have you been? Yep, I'm seeing a couple. First time, awesome. Been 1, 1, and 2, awesome, great. So I think it would be worth it, Mel, for you to just quickly recap for our newbies what those other two are about and set us up for our conversation today.
Yeah, sure. So like Sarah said, this is our third roundtable. The first one, it was really kicking off the toolkit. And so we did that. It was about a year ago now. And so if you're not familiar with that, you can find that on mindfulmaterials.com. And this is where you can sign the letter if you haven't already done so and download a copy of the toolkit. And just to kind of briefly remind everybody like where these things are found, so so here you'll find where you can, from this page, you'll see the download button for the toolkit, and you can also access the previous roundtables if you want to rewatch the ones that you've missed online. So once you download the toolkit, you'll find tools in here like the conversation tree to help guide the conversation with clients, regardless of what their goals are. If they have goals, if they don't have any sustainable goals, different ways to approach that conversation. You'll also find language that you can use in your SD narratives. And this is literally a copy paste that you can take and adapt into the narratives that you already have, so that you have a material transparency section in those. The toolkit also includes a list of questions that you can ask your manufacturer's rep about healthy materials. If that's not already a practice that you are doing in your tabletop presentations, this is a really nice part that you can just have a quick reference when you have reps come in and hit them with a couple of these about the products. And the toolkit also offers some suggested project goals based on project size. So looking at your top quantity fixtures on the project, so either targeting just your one top quantity fixture, which is usually going to be some kind of a commodity, whether it's a downlight or a linear, or even a backup house, but based on different sizes, there's some suggestions around that. And you'll also find some search engine tools that you can use either on the rep side or on the designer side, such as like the Declare database or LightAZ and Ecomedes. There's a lot of different resources out there to identify product if you're not as familiar. And there's also some language that you can use on your lighting schedules to identify different luminaires that either already have some sort of a label that you've identified and that's why they're on the job, or perhaps you've been working with the manufacturer to obtain a label and that they will be awarded this job upon obtaining that label. And there's different ways that you can use language to identify those on your schedule. And there's a ton of additional resources in there for you to look into as well. So that was really like a super quick recap of our first roundtable. The last one that we did in the fall was more of the authors of the toolkit coming together and talking about some of the ways that we've been trying to implement this work in our own offices. So we did a series of case studies where we looked at what the project size was and what type it was and what the main parameters of the project were and what approach we were taking. Were there sustainable goals? What goal did we set? Was it a 3-name spec? And then what were our lessons learned from that? So both on the good side and the bad side. So what went well, what didn't work out so well. And so we walked through a couple of these stories, and I'm hoping that when Sean talks, maybe he will highlight a quick recap on one of the case studies that we talked about. That was a success story as well that he was involved with. But so this time we want to hand the mic over to some of you guys, some of the signatories, and let you guys talk about your own case studies and things that have been working and not working, so that we're all kind of sharing things together in this process. And so with that, I think we can jump into our first one.
Yes, fantastic. So Adam Kibbe is our first case study guy, and he is the founder and the principal of Collaborative Lighting. And Adam, if you're ready, I can give you the mic so you can talk to us about your experience.
Great, sounds good. So this is I'm under an NDA, and it's not actually all that fascinating. It's just how the client rolls. They're just really publicity shy, and they gave me permission to talk about the project as long as I didn't say where it was. And I know some of you know what it is because it's under construction, but I can say it's in territory, talking New England. I can say that it's but it says there in the upper left, 400,000 square feet, couple of phases. It's 12 with an option for 2 more floors of a 40-odd story high rise. And the first 5 floors are under construction. They're like 30,000 square foot. They're a little over, but something square foot floor plates. And I had been approached last year by an old colleague who was serving as a consultant to Lightly in the development of their first fixture, which at the time was called Simple, which is a name I actually thought was really great and should have stuck, although Butterfly works well. I don't know what they think it means. Does it refer to the profile? Does it refer to the distribution? But it's a pretty unique fixture in that it's open in the middle. Their literature does a terrible job of showing you that you can look right up through the middle and see the ceiling through the middle of the fixture. It has an incredible distribution, as you can see from that polar coordinate there in the kind of middle of the screen, that little dark green butterfly shape. And this project isn't all open plan, but it's a lot of, 20–30% of it is open plan. I think we've got 1,700 linear feet of this going into these first 5 floors net. And the building module has fixtures, has column centers 15 feet on center. So we really needed a fixture with impressive lateral distribution, and this just fit the bill. So I think if I hadn't been working on the development of the fixture, I don't know if I would have been comfortable bringing this to the party, but it's an architect and a client that I've done a lot of work for over the decades. And it was a pretty good conversation. They pushed back a little bit on sole sourcing because there's really nothing that has this declare label, this kind of performance made of these materials. I have no idea how I would write it through equals if this was a project that required it. It did not. We did have to explore other options, look at other fixtures, discuss form factors, cost, blah, blah. In the end, they saw a sample, they were sold. The only thing that didn't fly was this. You can kind of tell that middle picture at the very top in their quest to be as sustainable as possible. Lightly took it to the mat. They designed this hemp cord tension wooden structure way of aligning the fixtures, and it looks like, I don't know if anybody went to Omnilight Illuminate's launch party for this thing, but it's a mill building kind of thing. It's the old architect's building, and it's a lot of exposed structure and things. So in that environment, that kind of a cord looked beautiful. In this environment, you'll see in a couple of slides a rendering of sort of what it's like. It's all very slick and modern, and nobody was buying the Etsy-esque quality of this hemp cord wooden structure thing. I would have gone with it, but I was all alone there. So rather than lose the fixture, even lightly, by adding to their spec sheets a standard aircraft cable option, recognize that sometime that's going to be what's going to get the fixture on the job. So it was really not a difficult conversation. I'm one of the ones, full disclosure, I'll say I answered no when they said, do I have a program goal? I don't have a target for myself, and my firm is myself, by the way. But how many jobs will have what percentage of? I want it to be as much as possible, but it's right now it's when the context makes it viable. So I think we could probably go forward a slide. This is a little excerpt of what you'll frequently find in this building. These sort of, it's a really interesting floor plate shape. I can't show you the whole thing, but there are areas that have these interesting curves. Sometimes it's perpendicular to this, but you can kind of see that the columns, which are 30 feet on center, then puts our fixtures 15 feet on center. And the clients want flexibility. They want to be able to move, and they never will, but they want to be able to move all these workstations around or change the program and put in soft seating for collaborative areas or what have you. So an indirect scheme that isn't very precise really made sense. And we explored doing this 10-foot on center, which would be another way to resolve the geometries. But with a fixture this good on its distribution, I'd say we're almost 1.1 to 1 across the major work plane surfaces in terms of it's about a 9'6" ceiling when you get out to the perimeter here. We get 8'6" in the core. There are areas of 9, and we get up to 9'6" here. So the 15-foot works exceedingly well. The max mins on the areas studied were something like 2.5 to 1. That's max to min, and those mins just fall in circulation. So the building, I haven't seen a comm check in a while. I think we're below 0.6 for the building overall, though there are some fussy energy intensive areas. I think I'm at about 1/3 of a watt a square foot for these areas. I don't know how the cost is coming in, but it is a project that in territory, it's maybe the first one I can remember that every single fixture on the fixture schedule was submitted and purchased as specified. There was it's not packaged to any agency. Everybody got a piece of it for absolutely apolitical reasons, and everybody just played it that way. And I'm not really sure why that happened, but I'm ever so glad that it did, because this would have been a weird battle to fight. And I would love to be able to tell you what it's like to fight a high precision sustainability spec, but I didn't find out, and I'm not unhappy about that. I just can't comment. Now, so far it's been super easy. These lengths have to vary. This building is really fairly weird. And so we have lengths running from like 9 feet to 40 feet. And the fact that this fixture can be supplied in 1-inch increments was really useful. We stuck with 1 foot. So fixtures either end on grid or center tiles. That's, pretty easy to coordinate. And then we did A drawback to this fixture, I will say, is that its very nature as being open in the middle means it is not line voltage. It is remote driver, low voltage. So you end up with a lot of fees. I made that point. I hope everybody understood it, but now let's go forward one more slide. You can see this is a rendering that the architects did based on the actual dimensions, but I don't even see the cables, never mind the cords. So I'm just hoping that won't be some sort of hideous hiccup and a big surprise when it comes to day one. And you can't really read that photometric, but if you zoomed in, you'd probably find the highs just above 40 and the lows in the middle still 30. So it's generally speaking in that 30, 35 sweet spot. And in the open plan, nothing really falls much below 30. There might be 25 here and there, but you don't get down into the teens until you get to the edges where nobody's doing anything but walking. So I'm owning there on the left that it's a very unrealistic rendering, doesn't show the power cords, but it served. There were other floors in this building where the other designers had rejected the notion of linear pendant fixtures because they thought that it further flattened a rather, I mean, for the spans of this space, 9'6" isn't actually all that tall. And I understood their point, but I make the exact opposite statement that lighting a ceiling and lightening it and brightening it is much better than bright lines of light and high contrast where the rest of the ceiling is much darker. I think it lifts the ceiling and the fixtures are so small. I mean, 4 inches tops and 2 3/4, 3 inches wide. I don't think it interrupts much at all at 15 feet on center. So that was my story. It was actually sort of a cakewalk.
Which is, I mean, thank God, right? How wonderful. When people say it's so hard to do this, it's like, well, is it? We'll see. But I actually have a question for you, a follow-up question, Adam. You shared, some information about costs and pricing and what happened in this particular situation. And I think that's certainly one of the things that I hear a lot. And I think a lot of us hear about what some of the challenges are is cost or even perceived cost about what something might be. Can you share with us a little bit about when in the process the conversation, when you brought this up and said this is a good solution here, how did you attack the pricing conversation? How did you not, in a place where you didn't have to have 3 equals, did you find that the client had any concerns about, manufacturer longevity and all those kinds of things that come around with a new
They
product?
were absolutely focused on the sole sourcing question because it's not a myth, but it's the thing that every contractor distributor team will tell you that if you sole source things and make everybody buy little bits and pieces, it will ruin you and cost absolutely so much. There's no question that packaging and going to having everything come out of one agency because all profits can be coming from one source, they can shave all the profit margins down, you will get better pricing. But projects have budgets, and budgets is, if you're on budget, I think we should be happy. If someone starts the conversation with a value engineered number, no one will ever forget it. And I mean, heck, we could do this whole thing with bare strip and save even more money, but we're not going to do that. It'd be god awful. So I prefer that projects get priced as specified, see what it's like, make your first round asking everybody to sharpen their pencils before you then resort to political moves and package things and give people certain advantages, because that never happens without some kind of compromise. I really don't know what, I mean, I did identify 6 or 8 other fixtures that I could have lived with, but none of them did what this does. So now another thing I'll just confess that I'm not alone in the world, I'm sure, but I'll front load a project somewhat. Like what's not showing here, you can kind of see in the background of that picture, just above where the 2 pictures overlap is an office with a sort of a curved corner of glass, etc. And in that office is a wall-mounted linear indirect, extremely good asymmetric distribution. I've never found an equal. And in the first round, we had 2 in every office because it would just make that much more even of a ceiling. Well, most of these offices are not that big. A few of the larger conference rooms still have 2 on opposing walls, but it was an VE always happens. And it was an easy VE to get rid of one of them. And I mean, it's like a sacrificial lamb built in from day one, specifically to take a bullet for the rest of the spec. So.
Yep, but always a smart thing to have something that you can live without, right?
And we had to change some things that we slightly regret. We had some really cool linear multi-source wall washer things that now exist only in a few specialty areas, and our standard corridor, which is god awful boring. I had a huge move early on in this building of a long arched fixture that had something to do with the shape of the fixture and would have looked extremely cool, like a radius oval, and it got shot down. Now we have a bunch of downlights wall washing the core. And they were once a cooler fixture than they are now, but hey, it's wall washing on the core. I'm one of the few people who will care about what that was. And we have a few of the cool fixtures elsewhere. So arguably that even makes them more special.
Awesome. And just one more question kind of about that conversation we were having about budgeting. Are you pushing to try to, like, when did that budget number arrive for you? Was that a DD? Was that an SD? Did that come in CDs?
In this case, DD, but it's not always known. Frequently, I'll look for a budget early on to say, what am I shooting for? And frequently, they just don't know. There's some big electrical square foot number that's fluffy and nebulous. And when pressed, they may not even be able to tell you if it includes labor or is it just fixture cost. And so generally speaking, you throw something out there and then they'll tell you if it costs too much. In this case, they push back more on principle than on actual number. Notice that these fixtures are 15 feet apart. Our density is not high. Working with extremely efficient fixtures that can brook rather large spacings, that keeps your dollar cost down because you have fewer of them. That's one of the reasons why we gave up on the 10-foot center. It also just looked busier, but we saved a ton of money by our spacings. And in the offices, having only one wall mount indirect, a single install, and really, really easy. So I think that's part of the budget approach, is working with extremely efficient fixtures lets you use fewer of them.
That's something I'm making a mental note to the team that we should probably add things like that to the toolkit, because it's a win-win really in a couple of different ways. So
yes,
great talking points about pricing and packaging and equals and all kinds of things, because of course there aren't that many right now. So putting three names together can sometimes be difficult.
Yeah.
So awesome. I think that is great. I don't know if anybody else from our crew has any other questions off the top of their heads. You can always drop a question in the chat. We can come back to it. But for the meantime, thank you so much, Adam, for sharing your treasure with us. I appreciate that. And I'm going to move on to Sean, who's going to give kind of a different perspective, as I mentioned before. But if you didn't hear it or joined late, Sean is one of the great sales agents at Reflex Lighting, which is one of the agents here in the New England area. And they have a couple different product lines in their line card that are focused on this topic. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about what he's hearing in his world. So why don't you take it away, Sean?
All right. Thanks, Sarah. And thanks everyone on the call and allowing me to participate and give our updates. These updates obviously are coming from the manufacturing side directly. Reflex being a manufacturer's agent. One of our roles at this juncture is to really be advocates for sustainability and, just being mindful of their approach to design and to manufacturing practices, to shipping practices, the whole gamut. Unfortunately, I think my update isn't incredibly uplifting tonight, but it's realistic. And I think it kind of paints a picture as to where we are at this point in time. And I think I'm optimistic though that what you'll hear from me in the next 10 minutes is encouraging. And I think I think there's a lot of manufacturers that are really being receptive to what we're sharing with them from the agency side. It's just a matter of, them committing their time and resources, budgets, and all of that to this mission. So we can kick it off from there, Sarah. Next slide. So I think, from Reflex side, and I think this is probably true for all the agents locally. I know there's probably some on the call tonight. I think in fairness, all of us have the same approach and mission. And in terms of, our reception to sustainability story and really being advocates out there in the marketplace with our manufacturers. Speaking specifically from Reflex's side, I know anytime we have a manufacturer in town or have an opportunity to have a discussion with them virtually or through email or whatnot, this conversation often comes up. And, and I think Emily, one of my colleagues, is on the call tonight. And, And she's also done an amazing job at, really spreading this mission and this story. And, I think one of the challenges we have is I think in New England, we're kind of in a bubble. The same can probably be said for a lot of those people and entities out on the West Coast too. And I think it's the age-old story where, the coastal areas are, probably a little bit more progressive with their approach to the whole sustainability story, and they're more on board. And I think that really holds true, not only from the design side here locally, but also from the manufacturing side. And those manufacturers of ours that are either based on the East Coast or the West Coast are really the ones that we are finding are the ones that are, really leading the charge and out in front of this. But, again, that's not to say we're not really continuing to spread this message to those, outside of the coastal areas, those manufacturers that are in middle America or even in Canada or other parts of the globe. I mean, I think it's really, unfortunately, somewhat regionally based, just worldwide right now too. But I think, the more opportunities we have for engagements like what we're doing tonight, it's just going to, I think the groundswell is building. So therefore I am optimistic, but it's just taking time. And again, as I've already stated, I think a lot of that's just wrapped into, what manufacturers are prioritizing right now, whether it's new designs, new technologies, a lot of, obviously on the lighting side, a lot of what the focus is on the manufacturing side is around controls, and obviously there's some element to sustainability on that side as well. But I think in terms of fixture design and material usage and whatnot within the fixture world, that might not be as high a priority to a lot of manufacturers. We can go to the next slide, Sarah. So I just start, obviously, from the agency side, we represent, along with all my other colleagues on the agency side throughout New England, we represent a whole bunch of lines, well over 100. Cooper is our conglomerate that we support and been supporting for several decades now. One of my objectives tonight is not really to spend too much time on any one particular manufacturer or to be promoting any one particular manufacturer's products or approach to design, but really this is, I'm only mentioning their names as it relates to, what we're seeing out there, across our line card. But in terms of Cooper's approach, one thing that helps them is that the parent company is Signify. And Signify, in terms of any lighting company out there, and whether it's a privately held company or a publicly traded one or conglomerate, I think Signify, I think most of us would agree is probably out in front of this more so than a lot of others. They might be, they're probably top 3 in terms of their approach to sustainability. So that helps Cooper because they are, part of the Signify family, and a lot of what Signify is doing in their approach to design is kind of running downhill to Cooper. So Cooper is slowly adapting some of these practices. Their first foray into sustainable design and EPDs and whatnot really centers around their 3D printed product family, which is it's using all biocircular materials, whether it's C plastics or other recycled content within their 3D printed product. And that's all being done locally too, out in Burlington, Massachusetts. So that's pretty exciting, and it's a great opportunity. I'll throw this out there now too. Maybe we could do a field trip out there at some point. They're always welcoming visitors to see what they're up to. And I have yet to get out there myself, but I've seen some photos and content around the operation out there, and it looks pretty exciting. And there's certainly, in terms of form factors, style of product, applications for the product, it's varied quite considerably, and it plays into a lot of a lot of designs from, commercial spaces to healthcare, institutional work, secondary ed. So, yeah, I mean, Cooper is definitely, he has heard the message, and a lot of, like I said, a lot of it's coming from the edicts from Signify. And I think, they're slow, they'll quickly start churning out more of this product with declare labels and EPDs. And, we're encouraged and excited about what's to come from Cooper. You will find they will, I think it's just about to go up if it hasn't already. They have a declare designation on their website. It's just going to take you to this 3D printed product, but because that's all that's declare listed at this point, but more to come for sure. You can go next slide. Light art's another interesting one. This kind of, I won't, get into too much on this, because a lot of what light art is doing is in line with what I just went over with what Cooper's doing with their 3D printed product. Light art was definitely out ahead of this. They've been doing this for a couple of years now. And so Cooper's kind of picking up, and trying to on their coattails here with what light art's done. And there's other manufacturers, obviously, that are good examples of this type of manufacturing practice as well. But light art has definitely been a champion of this from day one. All of their products too are declare listed, not just the products I'm showing on the screen there. So they have definitely really embraced the whole sustainability story and their design approach, shipping practices, all of that. And this is all done in-house in Salt Lake City. So great company to look at, and a company that's really listened to what the design community has put out there in front of them. And the last slide I have here is just kind of a recap of all the manufacturers that we represent that are declare labeled. And you can see if I were to say we have 120 lines, this kind of goes back to what I started off saying. We have a lot of work to do. And again, I'm optimistic, and the companies that are represented below there, are just going to, be the ones that are going to pull other manufacturers into this, into this design approach. One company I'll just quickly highlight, just because it's local to us too, it would be Zyco. They're out of Woburn, Massachusetts, and a new emerging company is probably new to a lot, and the name is probably new to a lot of you on the call. They started off in the optics space about 25 years ago, and then if you look at that, similar to like the Cree story, where Cree was it's originally just producing chips, and then they got into fixture manufacturing. Other examples of that out there too. Obviously, that's kind of how Zyco approached their launch of luminaires and a vast catalog of product in a short period of time, because they were producing films and optical systems for a lot of companies that they now compete against. They realized that there was an opportunity here for them. So a few years ago, they launched the Zyco products and the brand rather, and right out of the gate, they embraced declare and made it their mission to, any product that they're putting out there and taking to market is going to come with the declare label. So that's just an exciting, inspiring story. It shows that, regardless of size of company, it can be done. It's just a matter of really, I think I think we already touched upon this too, but a lot of the hesitancy is just around, this whole perception that it's very costly and time consuming to go after these labels and this particular design approach. But I think it's easier than people think it is. And I think one of the missions we should lead with is really being as transparent as possible with, that type of messaging, so that we can, really break down some of those barriers for some of these manufacturers in the headspace that they're operating in terms of, what they're prioritizing when they're thinking about new products and new ways to reduce waste and consumption and all of that. And I think, that mission falls on, folks like myself, really every layer of our industry. But I think, the fact that as a manufacturer, as an agent rather, we have a direct conduit and voice to the manufacturer. It's definitely, this conversation is going to continue. It's only going to grow. We're excited about it internally at Reflex because there's so much good that's wrapped up in this, right? That's a lot, and so much of that is obvious. And this is the future of not only our industry, but every industry out there. It has to be. We're going to do our part. So that's essentially what I have. Hopefully that gives you leave on a positive note, I guess. But again, I'll circle back to what I started with. I think there's just a ton of work that we need to do, but I think this message is starting to gain a lot of traction, and the groundswell is definitely building. So I'm excited about what's to come.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sean. I mean, I think I can speak for many of us that, getting the outside perspective and hearing the feedback and having this be a bi-directional conversation instead of us just being like, this is what we want, is so useful. And, the answer isn't always going to be, yeah, it's easy and you can have it. It's a conversation, and there are other concerns. And, at the end of the day, we live in a capitalistic society. So people are still trying to make money. So it's, it's just a part of the game. So it's really useful for you to give us that transparent feedback. I just want to pick it, kind of one of the things you said, both when we were sort of prepping and talking about what we were going to talk about today, and I've been ruminating about it a little bit. One of them is that this idea that we're sort of in a bubble, or that this is sort of a regional thing. And, I certainly feel that because I happen to sit in Boston and around a lot of people that are talking about it. I hear about it from other people in different ways, certainly at conferences and things. And when you look at the signatories, which I'm not going to say we're at 100, but I think we're close to 100. Those places aren't just on the coasts. And luckily, we're in a digital age where sharing information isn't as regionalized, and a whole bunch of good things. But to the question I got is, what do you think we can do as not just a specifier community, but just interested parties all across the board to help amplify that signal? Do you have any advice for the way we're going about this, or maybe things that are working that's like, yeah, I keep hearing about this, that you think we should keep doing, that you're hearing from kind of your perspective and where you sit?
Yeah, I think, it sounds like this is probably, down the pipe a little bit, but, I think I think you said at the beginning of the meeting that the next event in October there'll be some manufacturer participation in, right?
That's right.
So I think more of that is really the key. I mean, they need to hear this directly from the design community, I think. I mean, so much, and that's true. I think that's historically been so true in our industry that, you guys really, the design community has the loudest voice with the factories. I mean, for us to, as a rep, to call up and, and to not, I don't want to use the word complain, but really, push them on this or lean on them a lot on this. I think it definitely has an impact, but I think the greatest impact is the messaging that comes direct from the design community. And I know that's already being done, but I think more types of engagement, whether it's at trade shows or seminars or walking tours, project tours, that type of thing. Just having a presence at those types of events and within that with that audience is really critical, I think, because myself and any other agent out there can go, scream this message as loud as possible every day, and it'll still only gain so much traction. I think that really, to get the wheels spinning is gonna take a push, harder push from the design community with the opportunities when we're bringing factories into designers' offices, just really taking 5 minutes to have that conversation with that factory representative direct is critical too. The more they hear it, the more it's going to resonate.
Yeah.
I want to piggyback off of that, Sean. I'm glad that you brought up like the tabletop presentation example, because I really feel like it's the combination of our two voices combined that has the most impact. And the example that I was thinking of earlier that I mentioned was with
Darby.
Felix, with the undercab, like with one of our projects where we had identified, I think we were going for three of our commodity fixtures on that job, and one of them was one of your products, and they didn't have a label, and I really didn't want to change the spec. And so like I had started a conversation with them that like I felt like I wasn't really getting anywhere. And like when I reached out to you, then I felt like that's where my power really was, because you were the one who really got them to change their heart on that one. I don't know if like, you kind of filled me in on the back end like conversation, but I think the way that you handled that, like that, I couldn't have done that on my own without your support.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think,
and they were from the middle of the country too. They were like,
yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I don't want to make it sound that that it's only on the a coastal approach here, despite the fact that all the manufacturers I have on the screen right there are predominantly on the West Coast in California, and then Zyco in Massachusetts. But I think it's I think it's a two-headed approach really, and I think you're right, Mel. I think going at it from both sides, from the agency side as well as the design side, makes a lot of sense, and that because we're I think at this that message is consistent when it's coming from you or from me, because that's my job as an agent is to make sure that the designers that I support are getting the product that they need, that they're designing for on the project. And if this is one way to do that, then I'm gonna go out of my way to make sure that that message is shared to the appropriate people. That's the other thing I think too, is that oftentimes when as an agent, when we're dealing with someone from the factory, it's typically the regional, and there's obviously a depending on the size of the organization, the factory, the manufacturer, some of these regionals have a louder voice within their organization than others. So I think that's the other key too, is it takes some time and effort to navigate through the appropriate channel within the manufacturer to make sure that that the conversation and the messaging that you're sharing with them is resonating and is getting to the people that are actually having influence and making decisions in terms of the direction they're taking their manufacturing practices.
Right.
So
yeah, and it wasn't even a declare label that they went for, it was the HBD, but like
right.
that to us that counts just the same. So I think that was like a win-win for them too, because the cost of that was significantly less than the declare label.
And
Yeah.
progress, right?
What was that?
Progress is progress, right?
Yeah, exactly. But we should.
Yeah, I think that the last thing I'm just going to quickly say, and like, I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but I think one thing that as an organization we need to look at is, making sure that that the manufacturers understand that this approach to design is not going away and is not going to change. And because I think a lot of times manufacturers are very cynical, because they look at a lot of if you look at the historical, I guess, like DLC, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones off the top of my head, like Energy Star, like a lot of these different entities we're pushing manufacturers to hit certain parameters in their design and in their approach to design that weren't necessarily well thought out all the time. And I think a lot of these manufacturers look at declare, and this again is just the message we receive from as agents, And they look at Declare and like, well, is it really going to be, are those types of requirements and standards still going to be there in 5-10 years? What is the evolution of Declare within the lighting industry, that type of thing. And they're reflecting back on. What's that?
We hear that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that like this is part of the evolution. Like material transparency is just the first step. I mean, like this goes much deeper than, if we want to look at like carbon footprints, then like we have to know what's in the material to be able to do those calculations. And so like declares and HPDs are really just the first step to getting closer to EPDs, the environmental product declarations. And so that it is moving in that direction. And this is the baby step to get to the next step, actually.
Mhm.
I just want to also add that, I think that's why it's so important that we have so much collaboration across different parts of the AEC beast, because they are different, and I think groups like Mindful Materials that are trying to get the message to at least all move in the same direction on the same platform, using the same kinds of tools and the same kinds of frameworks, helps understand, like, is this a passing fad, or are we all agreeing, that this is the next thing? So anyway, super appreciate. I don't want to cut you short, Sean, because we could probably talk about this for another good hour or so. But, I think you bringing up the company's different whys, manufacturing, why they're doing it. Is it because they feel like it's the right thing? Is it because their clients are asking? Is it because their parent company, like a Legrand or a Signify, is like, this is who we are? It's fascinating to get the perspective. And I know it must be hard to sometimes sit in the middle between these conversations. So thank you for helping us fight the fight and sharing the information with us. Super, super valuable.
Absolutely. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to buzz through these last couple of things because we've only got 5 minutes. But one of the new things that we are trying to introduce, I think a lot of the feedback we're hearing is like, this is, the stuff that we're putting is great, but wouldn't it be nice if we could have more conversation, share more? People have talked about forum and all kinds of other things as a future state. But for now, who doesn't love a good Miro board? We have a Miro board, and maybe if I can ask Mel or one of my compadres to drop the link in the chat, if you want to scan QR. Oh, thank you. You're ahead of me. I love it. So we want to just encourage people to bookmark this and jump in there. There's really 2 big pages. One that kind of talks about things that are wins and bright spots, because that's what keeps us going sometimes. And there's a couple examples that we're getting enthused by hearing what works for everybody else. So that's awesome to share. And there's also another board that we added that's more about where we're having hiccups and challenges. And we just love people to throw ideas on that board, because it will also be fodder for future conversations that are, like we said before, happening about every 6 months. So please.
Sorry. I just wanted to thank everyone who filled out the brief survey before this event and already gave us some great input. We went ahead and dropped those comments. They're anonymous, but just dropped in on what people are already working on now on the Miro board. So you might see your comment there if you filled out the survey already. And there's blank ones for everyone to add in their own.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I'm going to throw a poll up in a second, but before we do that, real quick, one of the things we learned from that survey that Mel just alluded to is that some of the ways that we've done outreach, there might only be one person in a company that like signed the letter and then got, the newsletter and is kind of getting the feedback of information. And we just want to make sure that if you're a more than one person firm, unlike Adam, and you have many people on your team that you might want to kind of get in the loop or, include in the conversation if your team's growing, please encourage them to go also sign up for the Mindful Materials letter, because that's how we're kind of shooting information through people that are signing up there. You can also reach out to any of us to get on our e-list. And so with that, I'm going to ask the closing poll questions. There's going to be 2 of these as well. So let me pop up the first one, which is, what's the biggest challenge, if you're a specifier again, and if it's, this might work for others too. But what do you see as one of the biggest challenges that you're facing when you're attempting to specify materials with a healthy material or lighting, I should say, with a healthy material profile? Additional research time I'm seeing pop up. That one's a big one. I think, Adam was kind of alluding to this as well. With new products, you kind of got to see them, maybe show them to other people that have to see them. So it takes some time to get people on your side for that. a perceived cost increase, that's a big one that we hear about. And I'm really excited that I know Jane White from Fine Light and Ben Rapkin from both Light Glass and Lightly will be joining us for the next one to talk about perceived versus real cost. And Sean, you gave us some great ideas for other people we can include on the panel. So thanks for that.
And if you do fill out other for this one, we'd love to hear in the chat too what that challenge is.
Yes, we are getting one or two others. So that's great. I'm going to give it like one more second because we're a little over 50% and I'm still seeing it tick up. So if you're hovering, click a button and I'm going to call it right there. And then the last question is going to be, hopefully, what is it that you want to do next? And we'd love to hear if you're one of those people that's just starting, I'm running over to sign the letter right now, or download the toolkit, or, have that bold conversation with the next rep and regional that come through. And don't worry, we won't hold you accountable if you don't do this, because this is totally anonymous, but thank you for putting it in there and inspiring us. Loving the sharing knowledge with team members. That's such a big one. There's every time I check, there's more declare labels, HPDs, and products out there, but people need to know about them. So that's certainly something we'll keep talking about too. But definitely moving forward with trying to specify and update specs and things like that. So that's awesome. I'm going to end the poll there. And you guys can see the results, hopefully. And then I think that's pretty much it. And that's also pretty much our time. So just want to make sure that if you didn't already, drop this in your calendar. The website registration will probably be up there pretty soon if it's not already. But we are locked in for this date and the time, and you'll hear more about it in our next mailing. And thanks so much, everybody, for coming and participating. And if there's more that we can do, please drop it in the chat if you want to add your energy to us. We would love to have more people too. So let us know. And thanks again.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you all.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Mel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah and team. This was great.
And Laurel,
Thank
I
you.
know that we're going to be able to grab the chat stuff afterwards, right? So I don't have to
Yeah.
worry about ending too early. Perfect.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining. See you next time.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.
Bye.